Hey team, thank you so much for joining me on the Baby Playbook podcast for what we are in, which is a little bit of a special series where we're really honing in on childcare, daycare, safety with kids, and making sure that we're kind of like getting out some information there for parents who can be really anxious about this time in their baby's life where they are, embarking on the journey of putting them into care and finding something suitable for their family, and making sure that everybody's feeling really safe and really comfortable and really trustworthy as well. So as part of this series, I also really wanted to touch on starting to speak to your kids about, safety and their body, and making sure that they also understand that they're part of that picture of keeping themselves safe. Now, I know the Baby Playbook podcast is about babies. So it is a little bit of a tricky time, when you can't really speak to your baby about these things or can't really communicate with them well. But I think this conversation actually needs to start a little bit earlier rather than later in a household. And that might just start with you and your partner firstly, you and your family, the people around you that are watching your baby, and then that will eventually really flow into your child, and making sure that that's a really big part of, giving them that knowledge and that ability to really keep themselves safe and protected and confident in themselves as well. So what I'm really excited about is I have a really special guest, Nicki Esler Gill. She is the author behind a book that I think a lot of people are really familiar with. It's called My Body, My Rules. It's a book that we have on our shelf here at home, and we've read multiple times. And it's part of really a series of books that Nicki has released for children. She herself has a Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Writing from New York University. She's a mum herself, which is really great because she has this full understanding of, communicating with children and making sure that, you build that relationship with them. And she believes picture books are a special kind of magic. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today, Nicki.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that lovely introduction.
I'm so excited to talk because I think when we as parents embark on the journey of parenthood, all of a sudden we need to get our head amongst a lot of different what do I call it? Like skills. So, you need to teach your
Sure.
baby to sleep. You need to teach your baby how to, you need to be a master of breastfeeding / milk feeding. All of a sudden you need to know everything about, baby clothes and how to get them in the car safely. There's all these things that all of a sudden we need like a qualification in. And one of them as well is, of course, parenting and raising children and speaking to them about the right things. And that can be really overwhelming for us as parents, is like,
Yeah.
I have to have the right conversation with the right words. Did you find that quite overwhelming as well?
Oh, absolutely. I was totally overwhelmed by motherhood when, in the early days of being a parent, and conversations like consent can be particularly kind of confronting and challenging to know how to tackle them. So, yes, I definitely feel all the new mums and dads out there who are grappling with this stuff.
Yeah, certainly so. And especially, I think, in this day and age as well, with, we are Australia based, I'm Sydney based myself. And there's been a lot of chat in Australia the last couple of weeks about, childcare, child safety, speaking to our kids about advocating for themselves, and this also flows into that conversation about social media and this new, new type of childhood that our children will be dealing with eventually, especially if they're young, for those who are listening and have babies at home. So let's talk about this book. It's been out for quite some time, and your book is really such a key part of parenting for many families. What gave you this idea in the first place, and why did you feel like this was such an
Yeah.
important book to get out there?
Well, thank you. It's lovely to hear that it's resonating with families. That was my intention. The thing that first inspired me to write the book was actually the news.
Mm.
So, unfortunately, as anyone who watches the news or reads the newspaper knows, there are a lot of grown-ups out there who don't seem to have mastered the rules of consent, and who touch people when that touch isn't welcome. And so that is just such a problem, isn't it? It's a massive problem. And I just remember thinking, I can't remember what the particular news report that triggered the book was, but I just remember thinking, what the heck can we do about this? This isn't right. We need to do something about this. And I just had the idea of writing the book. And I should say, I know it's just a little book, and I know that it's not going to solve the problem of consent, but I am a really strong believer in early and age appropriate education around consent. So I just thought maybe I can create a resource that'll be useful for families and schools and kindies that can start to open up conversations for little ones about these really important issues.
And I guess that's the thing, right? It's just about starting that conversation and starting that language
Totally,
really open to get your child really used to, how they can say no, how they can respond when they're in an
totally.
uncomfortable situation. What are the main lessons that your book really focuses on when it comes to teaching
Yeah.
kids about body safety and privacy?
Sure. So there were two main lessons I wanted to communicate. The first one was about bodily autonomy and, giving kids the tools to speak up and say no if they were uncomfortable with touch that they were receiving. And so I thought that was really important. But there was a second lesson that I also wanted to convey, and it was one that I hadn't seen in any of the wonderful books that had been on the market. And that was basically giving kids like really solid tools to understand that other people have boundaries too, and to recognize those boundaries and know how to discern them and know how to respond to them. So that I guess it's both sides of the coin. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because that's important as well, right? It's about teaching them about being able to say no, but then also respecting other people's space as well and respecting other people's privacy, which, I've got like my kids are very young at the moment, but we, for example, don't have a lock on our bathroom at home. And so we
Yes,
started to find that there was a lot of like barging into the bathroom. And
I bet.
about a year ago when we moved in and there was no lock, I thought, oh no, like this is a conversation, right? Because you can't just barge into someone's
Yeah.
private moment of
Yeah. And
so
that's
it,
something that they have to be taught. They don't just know that
yeah.
automatically, do they? So it's all these little conversations that we have kind of on a daily basis, and lots of reinforcement, lots of repetition.
Mm.
I'm a mother of three kids myself, so I understand that these conversations aren't always easy.
Yeah.
But
And they're especially not easy, I guess, as well with, as I mentioned before, with parents who don't necessarily maybe have a background in, I don't know what it might be, but like, psychology or speaking to your children in
yeah,
the right way. Sometimes, I find myself as well, I go, well, what, or how can I actually get this message through to, for example, a 4-year-old? Or what does my 3-year-old
yeah.
understand that my 4-year-old doesn't like it's really hard to figure out how to have the conversation. So having a book like this, which is actually a really engaging way that you can speak to your child without like sitting them down and giving them a lecture as well.
Yeah, oh, that's lovely. I really wanted to make sure the book was fun and engaging and entertaining and not kind of doom and gloom. I wanted it to celebrate touch and all the wonderful ways we can care for each other through touch. But yeah, also giving those really important lessons.
So what do you think then, Nikki, is really from what age do you think we can really be having these
Yeah.
conversations with our little ones? Because that's a tough one
Yeah.
as well, when we can assume that our children won't understand, but we can actually be really
Yes.
quite surprised what they can pick up at what age.
Actually think that we can start to have these learnings, not so much conversations, but learnings about consent when they're pre-verbal. So obviously when we have babies, we touch them and we love them and we protect them and care for them, and we're not going to be asking for their consent specifically to do those things. So I'm not talking about needing consent in that kind of situation.
Mm,
But if you think of something like tickling an infant, you can really it kind of discern whether or not the infant is enjoying that touch. And I
mm,
think it's a matter of being respectful in those kind of situations. And if you see that your little one isn't enjoying a touch that is for your enjoyment, then you just don't do it. And so you bring in those kind of nonverbal learnings even before they can have the conversation with you, and just modeling that kind of respect and care. But in terms of conversations about consent, I know that people read the book to toddlers, and like obviously there'll be limits to a really young toddler's understanding, but I think it's still useful to just start to have those conversations at a really young age.
Yeah, it's such an interesting
Yeah.
topic you bring up as well, because I think when they are babies and you start to pick up when they like are really not liking something, um, sometimes, I don't know about you, but like we have a really big family, and sometimes I'd find, like family members would grab the baby and like insist on holding them even as they're like crying through it and like they're
Yeah.
not enjoying themselves. But then we kind of go, oh, well, it's okay. Like, and sometimes it's then about like the parent also going, okay, well, they're clearly not having a great time. I'm going to grab them. This is probably not comfortable
Yeah,
for them. And that starts really early on, right? Is just like picking up
totally.
their sense of emotion in that moment.
Yeah, totally. And it can be an awkward conversation to have with other family
Yes.
members as well, can't it? But I think, not forcing the kisses on the kids, not
Mm,
not make, you can teach them to be polite and to welcome someone and show care for them in a way that's respectful, but doesn't require a big kiss and cuddle.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
yes,
100%.
I've definitely experienced that with families as well.
Amazing. The other thing I picked up when I was actually introducing solids to my baby, so this was like within that, I think I want to say like 6 months to 12 months. One of the tips that they have is, because you can never tell, you would have, this is a throwback for you, but you can never tell if your
Yeah,
baby is, like you can't ask them if they're full, right? So one way in which you can ask them if they're full is to do this, which means more. And so I taught them to do this when they wanted more food, which they picked up surprisingly at a really young age. And I thought, what a great little tool, because then like you
that's
can apply
brilliant.
that to everything, right? Like, do you want more of this or do you not?
Yeah,
And they were
absolutely.
communicating at such a young age with that simple little sign.
It's so clever. It's
Yes.
amazing the way they can communicate with us.
Yeah, it's really
Sometimes it's just a
interesting.
matter of being sensitive to their signals as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. I also wanted to ask you, Nikki, what kind of feedback have you had from families, who have read the book,
Yeah.
um, about the conversation and helping them to get that out there and get started on it?
Yeah.
Mm.
One thing that's been really lovely, because the book is educational, but like I've had some feedback that kids really enjoy it and like ask for it to be read to them. And that just warms my heart that, this little book about, a big topic, that they're actually enjoying it. So that's nice for me as an author. But there's a section of the book that deals with non-verbal communication and teaching kids how to understand the signals someone's giving them, and it uses the analogy of a cat. And if you're trying to cuddle a cat and the cat is wriggling away and not enjoying it, you can kind of see, you can understand
Mm.
how the cat is feeling. And I think little kids, I mean, who doesn't love a cat? We all love cats. So I guess little kids can relate to that, which is nice.
Yeah, so I guess that has that. That's the thing, right? It has that both those elements of teaching kids, but then also teaching parents, but then also getting them to understand from both sides that they also are required to adhere to these sorts of principles of
Yeah.
like making sure that they're not making anyone else feel uncomfortable,
Yeah,
whether,
for
whether
sure.
it's a cat or not.
Whether it's a cat or a person.
Yeah, exactly. And you also have quite a few other books. It's not just My Body, My Rules. Another one is My Body, My Brain. You have Keep Your
Yes.
Pants On, which as a mum to two boys, Nikki, is like the taking off the pants phase.
I know.
It comes real quick and it comes out
Oh,
of nowhere.
I know. And they just love it so much. They're so joyful, aren't they? They're running around with their little nudie runs. So, in a way, that book's like an homage to nudie runs and a celebration of them. But um, yes, we definitely need to know when's an appropriate time for pants. That's
Yeah,
an
yeah.
important lesson.
Oh gosh. That and also just, taking off their jumper in the middle of winter. There's many different
Yeah. Oh my
things that
gosh. I still can't get my kids to wear jumpers,
Yeah,
and they're
it's
not toddlers
impossible.
anymore. So,
Oh,
yes,
okay, so it never ends. Great.
it never ends. That hasn't ended for me yet, anyway.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Nikki. I think, as I said, this is such a great book that we have at home, but I also saw it the other day at our daycare as well. So it's actually quite
Brilliant.
a useful book that if perhaps you're listening as well and you're a big fan of the book, suggest it to your daycare, get it into their shelf as well, because that's a really important conversation for them to start learning in that environment as well.
Thank you so much, Nicolina. It's been lovely to chat. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Now, what's really exciting as well is that if you don't have a copy of the book, we're actually going to do a bit of a giveaway. Thank you so much, Nicki, for the offer. You
It's a
could
pleasure.
win a copy of My Body, My Rules. All you have to do is head to the website, heynicolinak.co, and pop your email in, and you could be sent one of those books to have at home and get that conversation started for you. If you'd like to keep up with Nicki, you can on Instagram at Nicki Esler Gill, and that's just NICKIESLERGILL. So make sure you give her a follow and be keeping up to date with those more picture books that are coming soon. That was a tease on your website, which I was very excited about. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nicolina. It's been a pleasure.